Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to my presentation, Cartel War 1, and in case you missed it, Cartel War 2. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart, something I have significant experience with, and something that I think is very important uh, to bring to everyone's attention. Something that's been going on, it has been going on, is going on in the streets of your city, and something that probably is not very widely known. What I hope to give you tonight is a model, a paradigm. I call it a dynamic for what's really happening out there. Um, I had originally prepared this for the DC speaking tour, but not sure I'm going to make it to DC. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Daniel F. Quick. Um, I'm a former attorney. I attended Hamilton College in upstate New York, and then went on to law school twice, Seattle University, and then I got a master's in tax law from University of Washington. This was back in the 90s, a long time ago, and uh, what they basically teach you in tax school is reading the tax code. I'm gonna think of. I love reading the tax code. Actually, the tax code is fantastic. And don't worry, I'm gonna tie this in. So please be patient. Think of reading the tax code is this odd thing. It's got details and numbers and subchapters and subpart A and B, and it might read something like this, Section 61, gross income. For purposes of this subtitle, gross income shall mean subsection A, rents, royalties, and other income derived from passive sources or rental property. B, wages, commissions, salaries, other income received as part of an ongoing enterprise where labor is performed. C, income from annuities, subsection D, and so bing, 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 like right all. And then the next section would be adjusted gross income. Now, first one with growth. This is for purpose of this subtitle. The term adjusted gross income shall mean gross income as defined in section 61 minus the following and then go boom, boom, boom. So it's this weird sort of pedantic, clunky thing. And what happens is uh, it's a certain way that the tax laws are drafted, right? They're drafted as professional staffers who draft these laws, and each sort of subsection represents a special interest, that kind of thing. And so that's why it's written that way. Um, the reason this is interesting for me is during the course of what I'm going to talk about tonight, the cartel wars. During the course of this, I often ran into these situations where there was no law, where there was no uh, applicable statute that would allow me to get done what I needed to get done. It'd be one day. This was I guess, about 2 years ago, and I'm kind of doing my normal thing at the time, which was I'd be on the phone trying to make phone calls to different politicians and so forth, people trying to get support, and I keep running into dead ends. Say, hey, you're trying. First of all, you have the cartels, which is kind of this large, sort of amorphous kind of thing, and even if you are in control of a nation state like the U.S., it's hard. You can't really like go after everybody all at once. What do you do? You're going to send the army? I mean, so anyway, so I'd run into these situations where there was no law, right? And it happened. It occurred this one day. I have a friend in Washington State. We have something called the Senate law. There's a state Senate, the legislature, Senate, and the House, essentially. And the Senate has something called the Senate Law and Justice Committee. And that's a committee of state senators that has jurisdiction over a lot of law enforcement issues and judiciary issues. There's a committee for civil rights that has some overlapping jurisdiction. So I was talking to this guy who's a staffer for the Senate Law and Justice Committee, and he had been very gracious. I had sent him some materials to circulate among the committee, some things about what at the time, were some problems with law enforcement. And so I'm talking to the guy and I'm telling him about, all my issues and problems I'm having with the cartel. And here's what the guy says to me one day. He's on the phone. He's like, "Look, here's the thing." He says, we, meaning the legislature, he said, we are a legislative body. We are not an investigative body. He said, there's no way for us to investigate any of this or even to help it. We're not an aid organization, essentially. But what he said was, he said, hey, you can propose a law. Like, I don't want to testify. He said, you can propose a law. And so that sent me down this road of starting to draft my own laws and participate in that part of the process, because I was literally running into dead ends. Like if there's like a witness protection program thing, but you're kind of helping them. You're kind of helping out one department, but you're getting harassed by the cartel. So that's, and I'll get into some of that later. Um, but there was in particular a law that was dealing with what to do with corrupt police officers, and how much of a problem that became when you're trying to combat something like the cartel. Uh, so my tax background was really unique and really helpful for that, and it's just so I never thought I'd be using my tax background. I mean, I could recite the tax code inside out, but it became very helpful then in structuring how some of these laws should be changed or drafted. Um, Tonight, more specifically, the subject that I'm going to discuss, the cartel wars. Um, and I'm just being frank here for a minute. When I discuss a subject, a serious subject, I'm a bit of an intellectual snob. I like discussing the reality of things, not the fiction of them and not the imagination of them. My goal is to actually give you something useful, something new and something useful for you and my contemporaries that you can have, that you've learned, and um, you will not get any falseness, um, any BS from me tonight. It'll be the reality of what's really going on, things that I've experienced firsthand, and with sort of my unique background. So just know that. And at the same time, I don't have much tolerance for people who do come up and try to say things and falsehoods and that sort of thing. This stuff is real and it's really happening. Um, and the reality here is what's going on is there's a war in America on a nightly basis on the streets of your hometown, between the cartel and law enforcement, the forces of good, the forces of evil, and the forces of good. And a lot of what makes up the cartel and what I call the slave army are your sons and daughters and your brothers and sisters. It's citizens of America. I've outlined some of this here. Think of start with this paradigm, with this model, okay? And uh, it's about 10% of the U.S. population. Think of everyone who is an everyday drug user makes up part of what I call the cartel slave army. It is this unit of people, and they show up on a daily basis to get what they need. And and I go into this more, in kind of some another talk, but uh, think of what the change is here. And when I say Cartel War 1, I'm talking 2000 to about 2015 when they achieved their goal of enlisting about 10% of the U.S. population. Is that there was a shift, okay? It's what I call the cultural iconography of drug use. And start with here, Woodstock, okay? Woodstock in the 70s. That might have been your parents and your parents' generation, okay? And then New York City, cocaine in the 80s, the excesses of Wall Street and the excitement there. And then go to San Francisco, and I didn't finish making the notes here, in the 90s with crystal meth. And think, what is that? What does that represent? And by my view, think of it this way: each each decade would represent a generation, and each generation was trying. They were out there seeking something. They were looking for something. They wanted their own experience. That's why different drugs, the shifting drugs, and That's what's kind of disappeared. Like they wanted a time when they could say, hey, they went out with their friends and they had this wild and crazy time before they ended up going back and settling down and sobering up and going on, to sort of their wholesome adulthood. And that was kind of the goal. And they, most of them, you might say they achieved it in a sense. But that was the generational goal. Like the kids of the 90s were different than the ones who wanted to experience that in the 80s. And and very different than Woodstock. Woodstock in the 70s and the protesting and all, it was very different. Now, that is gone. That has disappeared. That sort of idealization, that funness, that generation representing your generation is gone. And it's this more serious, dramatic thing where you're either on the inside or the outside. You're either part of the slave army or you're not. And if you're not, you don't get access to things that are there. You don't get access to the drugs. But that's what shifted. Is it's no longer this fun party thing with your friends. That whole concept is gone. And I think you'll find that if you go out there, people may be looking for a few people may be looking for that, thinking they can achieve that. But that is not overall. There is no uh, recognizable generational sort of goal or shift or anything out there. It is quite different now, and so so that's a bit of the backdrop. Uh, I'm going to go on. It has been difficult for people like me and for hundreds, even thousands of law enforcement people to sort of bring awareness about this. Um, Let me just go on. I want to talk about the slave army in my model, and really, I'm giving you a model tonight for a different way to look at things, right? A paradigm. Think of the slave army as about 10% of the U.S. population. Start with this. They are. It consists of everyone who's a daily user. That is, of the goods sold. They show up on a daily basis to get their drug. Uh, think of they're paid not in cash, but in drugs. And that is this concept of cartel land. It's like a parallel universe. It is a different world. You do not need money to survive there. You get drugs and there's other government benefits and so forth. Money is still valuable, but it is not necessary. And cartel does not pay in drugs. It pays and rewards loyalty with money. It pays and rewards loyalty with drugs. Cartel will keep supply at about 80% of demand. So not everybody gets theirs every day. It's a control method to control the slave army. You think about 10% of the population, and that's a lot of people. Uh, you can see, it's almost like being full-time employed. These slave soldiers, as I call them, which is, I've been part of that. I've been part of that thing. It is, they do the bidding of the cartel. Everybody has a role to play, from being a user to carrying out sort of orders, to being part of the team, to giving comfort and support to other cartel members. Uh, and it's like two worlds out there on the street. It's like two different worlds, okay? And I go into this a bit here. It is happening in your city. I'll take one of my home cities, the city of Seattle, Washington, for example. You go to Seattle and you look for the biggest thoroughfare. It's called Broadway Avenue, one that's not a highway. And you look down, and there's one side of the street that's cartel side, and one side is the cop side. And there's some ways to tell which is which. You look down on the cop side, and there'll be the larger, more institutional sort of stores. Um, Maybe universities tend to be there. Uh, uh, Newer residential things. You look down the other side, and it'll be tend to be the cartel side. More independent businesses, maybe businesses that sell Mexican Coca-Colas. Uh, the residential areas won't be as developed, or they'll be older. There'll be more people on the street probably, and a different kind of person. And the way this is how the cartel fights for their territory. It forms part of cartel, and they're out there on a nightly basis, marking the territory, staking it out. From dealers on the corner to other people, it's the way that is the war that's going on. Now you can have these two sides. Then you look at the middle of the road, right? And this is kind of a little aside. You look right in the middle, and you can see something interesting, something you don't see very often, something really, really unique. What you see, if you look close, is you see somebody like me, somebody who lives in both worlds, somebody who's kind of beholden to two masters, one on the good side and one on the bad side, usually out of circumstance, out of necessity, maybe for survival. What has happened is that without people like me who kind of lived on both sides, it's hard for me, even for me to grasp sometimes. Without people like me, the two sides would not have much knowledge of each other at all. I get followed on a daily basis by the good guys and the bad guys. With a simple act that they're trying to watch me and learn and uh, figure out what's going on. The good guys want me to leave them to the bad guys. The bad guys want me to like give them an edge up on the good guy. It's strange. It's bizarre. Now I know in the end I'm a good guy, but because of this weird circumstance that I'm in, like the bad guys try to kill me outright, and the good guys try to treat me with this weird kind of neglect. Um, it's very strange. But again, without people like me, the good guys would have little or no knowledge of anything cartel. So I want to go on and talk about Cartel War 2, what I call Cartel War 2. Um, 2000, year 2000 to 2015, 10% of the population is now part of the cartel army. And I want to talk about Cartel War 2, starting about 2017 for me. It was the day that I first identified to the authorities a number of people in Seattle who were part of this organized crime. There was a building that I had moved into, a condominium building, and this was about 2013, I guess. And uh, back in 2008, sort of the white guy side element of the cartel had gotten dug in this building, right? And it was like a hotel with condominiums. But the point was that most of the people who lived there, these condos were like a second home for them. That is, they weren't there very often. And so there were elements of this organization that was able to seemingly go from like unit to unit and some other units and use this as a place to cook exotic substances. And I know it was a brand new building and all the pipes kept failing over and over and over again. But they got dug in there, and at one point they tried to recruit me um, in my unit, I guess. And I said no. And my life kind of changed after that. It became this idea of this invisible hand and things, everything from my career to well, all kinds of things, relationships. Uh, and then when I tried to say something about it, uh, then it got even worse. Uh, One of the surprising parts, I'm going to talk about this. So there would be, my life being destroyed, everything from social structures to my career being attacked, all that. But the surprising part is about half of it would actually occur in my own body. Um, I've been invaded by all kinds of things, everything from viruses to fungus to weird sticky stuff to everything. I've been attacked on that level to you can't even imagine kind of illnesses and sicknesses. I've organic things that have invaded my body that are abused as offensive weaponry from the cartel, certainly against me and against other people that I know. And the other thing about it, uh, think of since making those reports, I've had more bad guys chasing me than good guys, and certainly more bad guys trying to kill me than good guys protecting me. The good guys are probably ill equipped, uh, even at the federal level. Ill equipped, there's just not enough people. Um, for example, if you're a police officer in any city, whether you realize it or not, cartel knows who you are probably before you graduate the academy. They know who you are, even if you don't know who they are. They got you marked. Maybe they're not doing anything, but they know your family members. They know where you live. They know which one of your family members uses drugs. They know if you're corrupt or not. They know if you're corruptible, and they've got you down and marked already. So you are involved, whether you realize it or not. That's probably goes at the same at the federal level. Um, Things like that, that should not be a surprise. They have people everywhere. It's just the way it is. Uh, the Mexican side, the Sinaloa cartel that's prevalent here, on the street, they run together as a group. It's a cultural thing. It's a phenomenon thing, but it's the way it is, and they have people everywhere. So think of it, it leads to so much craziness. I say that every minute of my life is like the first 2 minutes of a episode of Law and Order Special Victims Unit. Like it's just crazy stuff all the time happening, and I'm not the only one. Um, I mean, I've gotten, I get followed, so I have the bad guys report on me. The good guy, I get in trouble for spitting on the sidewalk, for using air freshener. I got an assault for using air freshener. All kinds of crazy stuff happens, and nobody will really talk to me about it. I mean, I get some police contact, but it's very strange. Nobody will talk. It took me a long time to figure out what's going on. It really did, and even longer to start to deal with it. Now, I finally decided to do this talk because I realized that I wasn't alone. That there are hardworking professionals in law enforcement and security people and all kinds of people across this great country of ours that are dealing with some of the same problems that I am. And I guess by heightening awareness of this and letting people know what's going on, uh, it might make it better. Uh, Politicians might tend to prioritize it a bit more. I know that drugs and drug use is still a side issue, maybe like homelessness. But this is like a domestic war going on. And I think we see the current administration starting to take it more seriously. But it's right there in front of you, in your hometown, on almost every street. I'm going to touch on just a couple more things here. Think of this parallel world. It's very strange. There's different rules for social conduct, different rules for what I call sensory input. When you're part of that world, you are part of that world. You can stay there, you can live there. It's like living in Russia or something. It's a parallel universe. And think that one of the things in pop culture, the second Kingsman movie. You know, there's this picture of the drug lord who's in the, big skyscrapers in the jungle and all these fancy toys, and then they have this plan for how they're going to use cell phones to invade everybody, and they use drugs. That is that is not far from the truth. You know, the dope that's sold is either good or it's bad or it's poisoned, whatever. But that's kind of a good parallel to how this might be. It really is. This is some other stuff that's relevant to my particular case, but this is what's going on, and so you have to understand for people. It's why I think so much emphasis and money is placed on the enforcement and on treatment now, because what you're really doing is bringing somebody from that other side and bringing them back. And I don't know any other way to do it, but that's how it has to be done. I'm again not going to go into the parts about my intelligence work and the things that I've done. Um, I'll just say that this has had. I've had some tremendous successes when it comes to the working against the cartels, and they've been hard fought. They have been hard fought for sure, and it's not glamorous the way it seems. It has the things that I've been through have left my body scarred, and my mind have been driven to the brink of insanity at times. Like for example, I wear gloves because routinely we'll have things, poisons and drugs placed on either whether it's a steering wheel or a doorknob, along with a topical solution that'll break the skin, and then I get poisoned that way. Like that happens all the time. I had cancer. I believe I was acutely poisoned. This was years ago, but I overcame that, and so it's been quite a road, and certainly not one that I had expected I would go on. But everything I've done out of love of my country and love of God, and it's made me a better person. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight and for paying attention to this talk. Um, Cartel War 1 and Cartel War 2. I'm obviously going to stay afterwards for as long as it takes and answer any questions that people have. Um, and I just urge you all to go down to that main street in your own town and see things for yourself. And you may be shocked, but thank you very much. Uh, Really, the amount of time that you dedicate to come here, I'm flattered, and I hope that this has helped out, and that you've enjoyed our time together tonight. Thank you very much, and I'll say a prayer for all of us. God bless.